Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. I'm your host, Dr. Franklin Ruehl, and today a very special edition, The Amazing World of Western Fact and Fiction. Yes, I said fact and fiction. We'll investigate Bat Masterson and the disappearing herd. Tell you the truth. Yes, I said the truth about Cattle Kate. She never stole any cattle. Reveal intriguing facts about the Pony Express and critique the 1956 Western Gunslinger, starring John Arlen and Beverly Garland, and cover other intriguing subjects, time of course permitting. But first, Bat Masterson and the disappearing herd. Now, back in 1878 in Dodge City, Bat Masterson was actually sheriff of Ford County in Kansas, which encompassed Dodge City. At that time, he'd just been elected the previous fall, so he was about 23 years old, and he was known as a very dapper gentleman and the fastest draw in the county. Now, coming in on Friday, April 26th, bringing in a herd of 100 cattle, was the notorious John Albright, otherwise known as Jim Albright. He was a guy who had a long black beard, looked like Blackbeard the Pirate, had 2 guns and shoulder holsters, and known as a murderer. One of his companions that day was an Indian, Johnson, Iron Buffalo, also a known killer. There are also 2 teenage drovers with them. They had about 12 horses and mules in addition to the cattle. And they were angry because that day they were unable to sell the cattle at the price they wanted. So they were stuck with it. That night, the 4 men entered the celebrated Long Branch Saloon, and immediately Albright challenged every man there to a gunfight. No one would take him up on it. Then, as the night ensued, he became more and more intoxicated. About 11 p.m., coming into the branch, Long Branch, was Bat Masterson and a couple of companions. They'd just been to the opera to see the Mikado, and they were humming tunes from it. And of course, Albright immediately realized this is Bat Masterson, and he called him a dude and a sissy for humming bars from an opera and challenged him to a duel. Well, Bat Masterson went up to him, even though the man was 6'4", whipped out his gun and put it in his nose and said, "What were you saying, sir?" And immediately Albright quieted down. But his companion, Johnson Iron Buffalo, reached for his gun. So Bat slapped him across the face, knocked him to the floor. And he said, "Gentlemen, I want you out of town by tomorrow morning at dawn, and I'll be there to see you off." And that morning, Bat, 2 deputies went over, and they got the herd together. Albright got on his horse, but he said, "Bat, I'll come back and I'll kill you dead." Then the 100 head of cattle, the 12 horses, the 4 riders were moving out of Dodge City, about a half-mile out, and they suddenly disappeared, suddenly vanished from sight, as though they had entered some sort of temporal vortex. Now, it wasn't just Bat and his 2 deputies, but a few townsfolk also witnessed this. And there was no trench, no sinkhole. They just vanished from the face of the earth. And over the years, Bat Masterson claimed this was what happened, that he was not fabricating this case. Someone thought maybe he had killed them. If he wanted to kill them, he could have done it in the Long Branch Saloon. He was the sheriff. He was challenged to a duel. But Bat Masterson was not a killer. Now, Bat Masterson actually wound up as a sports reporter in New York City for the Morning Telegraph for many years. In fact, he died writing a column at age 66 in 1921. And up to his dying day, he claimed that the herd and the men vanished into nothingness outside of Dodge City. Now, there is a small addendum to this. In 1942, a man, Jim Brown, claimed on his deathbed that he was one of the younger drovers and that they had somehow entered a temporal vortex, went into what he called a living hell for years, and he was only permitted to return to Earth because he was dying. Now, was this somebody who had heard about that case and was fabricating the experience, trying to make himself famous on his deathbed? Or was this true? We simply do not know. A true mystery from beyond the other dominion regarding Bat Masterson for your consideration.
And now a tribute to Bat Masterson and actor Gene Barry, who so ably portrayed him on TV and died recently at age 90. That tribute begins right now. Back when the West was very young, there lived a man named Masterson. He wore a cane and derby hat. They called him Bat Masterson. Now, until next time, may the power of the cosmos and of Bat Masterson be with you. Yes, yes, yes.